city, an American city with streamlined highways and teeming traffic, with tall buildings and busy people. Americans are efficient, strong, yet mental illness will strike 1 in every 20 persons in this town. Because of mental illness, the brains, ability, and energy of 1 American in 20 will be lost. Mental illness will take a toll of talent and beauty. Each year, American strength is being wasted because there's a difference between a man and a machine. Because people hate and sorrow and fear, 1 in every 20 will go to another city, a city of the sick, a state hospital for the mentally ill. At a distance, the typical state hospital looks like an old-fashioned college campus. Built in a day of elaborate architecture, many state hospitals were more impressive than practical. From their gingerbread towers to their jigsaw doorways, early mental hospitals were solidly built custodial institutions, asylums where the insane could be safely secluded for years, perhaps for life. In the past, the mentally ill were herded behind bars, chained and beaten. Insanity was looked upon as a disgraceful, mysterious disease with no hope of cure. Mental institutions were prisons, bedlams where treatment was brutal and hope was lost. Today, the picture is changing. Iron bars are giving way to modern safety windows and to new ideas on the cause and treatment of mental illness. New hospitals, modern treatment centers are replacing the asylums of the past. State hospitals are rebuilding, modernizing, expanding their treatment facilities. More than 175,000 Americans were admitted to the hospitals for the mentally ill last year. There are enough patients in this one hospital alone to populate a small city. Here live people from all walks of life, rich, poor, young and old, men and women from all races, nationalities, and occupations. The mental hospital today is a place where these people are being treated and cured. And I ought to know. I'm an attendant in this state hospital. My name's Harper, Bill Harper. A state hospital is a small city, a city of the sick. Living and working here, I've learned a lot about mental illness, what it is and what it does to people. I know the waste of human lives and the expense to the nation that mental illness causes. I know, too, the hope of those on the way to recovery, the hope of returning to their homes and families. And I've found that a guy like me, a psychiatric aide, an attendant in a mental hospital, can do something important towards the recovery of the mentally ill. These men, like myself, are ward attendants, responsible for feeding, clothing, and caring for 30 to 60 mental patients each day. We're closest to the patient at all times, and we're the ones he relies on day and night. The attendant who knows his job and who understands the nature of mental illness can do a lot to help the patient along the road to recovery. In spite of long hours and low salaries, the ward attendant is a key man in the mental hospital. The way he does his job can make the hospital a prison or a real treatment center. Take Bob Shannon, for example. He's been showing 16mm motion pictures to patients who can't get out of bed. Jim Boda got his patients interested in indoor gardening, and now his ward is one of the most cheerful spots in the hospital. And old Johnny Mitchell, who's been here longer than anyone else. Johnny Mitchell, who gave me my first lesson in how to be a good attendant in a mental hospital. It was just a week or so after I'd taken this job. The whole ward was going out for an afternoon walk, all except one. And let's call him Mr. X. He didn't budge when I called him. This guy's tough, I said to myself. Can't let him get the upper hand. So I moved in. resisted, I got mad and tried to bully him into coming. I didn't know much about mental patients and how they behave, although one careful look at his face would have told me that he was pretty sick, and that the tougher I got, the more difficult he would be to handle. It was then that Johnny Mitchell came in, and I must have looked silly. Me, Bill Harper, 200 pounds, 6 feet 3. I couldn't handle a skinny guy like Mr. X. I was glad when Johnny came up and asked me if there was anything he could do. He said I didn't think there was anything anyone could do. But Johnny did. He was confident and calm, and finally Mr. X came around. I learned my first lesson that day. Johnny Mitchell taught me that patients are people, sick people. An experienced attendant doesn't get excited, and he doesn't get rough. And he doesn't have to be 6 feet 3 either. That happened a long time ago, but I haven't forgotten. Well, it's time to report for duty. We work 8-hour shifts in this hospital, and I'm on from 1 in the afternoon until 9 at night. Play an important part in the life of an attendant. Keys for wards, keys for medicine cabinets, keys for single rooms. Doors have to be kept locked for the protection of the patients themselves. Before Ralph Johnson, who's on the early shift, goes off duty, he gives me a report on what happened on Ward 30 during the morning. The number and condition of the patients must be recorded. Drugs must be counted and checked. All sharp instruments must be kept in order and kept under lock and key. Johnson knows the condition and actions of his patients. He points out those who need special attention. For example, a patient in a highly depressed, moody condition bears watching. He may try something desperate. If his condition becomes worse, he'll be reported to the physician in charge. Other patients may be scheduled for special medications or treatments. Well, it's all mine now. I'm in charge of 60 mentally ill people, and it's quite a responsibility. Like many wards, this one is overcrowded. Without ventilation, the patients will become sluggish and inactive. People are happier and easier to handle when they're physically comfortable, and that's why fresh air and sunlight are important. Temperature of the ward should be about 68 degrees by night and 70 degrees by day. A bowl of flowers can cheer things up a lot, too. And a magazine or a book, for a time, can take a patient's thoughts away from his delusions and fears. The simple things are most important to a mental patient, like a light for a pipe or cigarette. Patients are people, and don't think that because they're mentally ill, they don't know what's going on. They notice and appreciate the little things you do for them. Ward housekeeping and bedpan duty are routine jobs for the attendant.